everyone, it's Raf and welcome back to Office Space. In this video I get to add new beautiful plants to my 20-gallon tank and a new sponsor to my team. The Plant Guy is a physical and online store that specializes in tissue cultured plants, both from Tropica and of his own line of tissue cultures. For this video I used only plants that he has grown himself from his own batch. Also, these are plants that I have had very little experience with. The only ones that I have owned before are the Alternanthera reneki and the Elocasia Mini. However, I failed to keep them alive in my 30-gallon tank, even though it has an RGBW light and CO2 infusion. I'm hoping that I can keep these ones alive in my 20-gallon tank since it is from a different source this time. It is his own cultures and I am using a high-end Tropica substrate. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. So the first plant that I want to talk about is Ariel Polaris. In terms of appearance, this plant is my favorite from this batch. This plant has multiple beautiful needle-shaped leaves radiating from the center. That reminds me of pineapple leaves, but longer and narrower. However, in terms of difficulty level, this is far from my favorite plant. According to my research on this plant, it's a much more advanced plant that requires a very good lighting and CO2. From what I've read, this is not exactly optional, so I am very curious as to what conditions this plant lives in out there in the wild. I will have to create a new tier in my mind and have this as the first entry on the most advanced plant that I've ever owned. So I hope that I don't let the plant guy down because he's counting on me to make sure that this plant flourishes in my tank. The second plant is Graviola Vestula. This plant reminds me a lot about pearl grass. It looks very similar to it, but with thicker stems, much like rotala plants. According to my research, this plant is less advanced than the previous one on this list, but not a beginner plant nonetheless. It needs good lighting, but does not require CO2 infusion. This plant apparently willingly branches off and it creates a lush carpet look when left to its own devices. So it seems to look and act like pearl grass. I'm very, very happy about that. The third plant is Alternanthera Mini. Based on my research, this plant is pretty much the same or very closely related to the regular AR plant that we all know and love, but only some of us get to successfully keep. As the name suggests, it's a tinier version of AR, and from what I've read, this plant's growth and appearance is enhanced by high lighting and CO2 infusion. To be completely honest, as I type this, I'm beginning to think that I should buy another CO2 system for this tank. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's just not something that I can afford. Number 4 is Cryptocoring the Finest Red. I think that this is my second favorite plant in terms of appearance. It has the typical Cryptocoring leaf and stem structure, but it seems to be a mixture of both red and green coloration, which just makes it visually pop all on its own. From what I can tell in my research, that this is much easier to keep than the other plants that I've previously mentioned so far. That being said, this is the only second Cryptocoring type plant that I have had, and I hope it does well. The other type that I have is Cryptocoring undulatus red, which is flourishing, thank God, in my 30-gallon tank. So plant number 5 is Elocasia Mini. This is a plant that I have always had problems keeping alive. Even in my 30-gallon tank with RGBW lights and CO2 injection, it's always gotten uprooted and or died in my care. My research says that this is one of the most reliable carpeting plants. However, that has not been my experience, probably due to the fact that I use inert substrate in my 30-gallon tank and not nutrient charged substrate like Tropica Plant Care that are ready to be planted into when you buy it off the shelf. Another difference this time might be the fact that The 20-gallon tank does not have high water flow because it's only using a sponge filter. In my 30-gallon tank, I love using excessive mechanical filtration, but the downside of that is it uproots certain plants, such as the Elocasia Mini. So hopefully this time it's different. Alright, there we go. These have been the 5 new plants entrusted to me by the plant guy. I genuinely hope that I can keep these plants alive, not only healthy, but hopefully, fingers crossed, flourishing in the tank as well. If I can do that, this would be an extreme confidence booster as a planted tank owner. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, please like this video and follow me on both YouTube and Instagram, whichever platform you're watching this video on. My handle on both is OFISH_space, so offish space. With that said, thank you for joining me on another offish meeting. My name is Raf, and this is Offish Space.